Hello, this is Moze Jacobs for DeBarra Spoken Word, and I'm talking to Colm Scully, who is in Cork City at the moment. And this is in view of his upcoming poetry film workshop, poetry video workshop, on the 6th of September. And that will be on Zoom as well, which is great because you can join from anywhere in the world. If you are interested in the process of making poetry videos, Colm, how difficult is it to make a poetry film or video?
It's it's like everything. The more work you put into it, the easier it gets. But I actually was preparing some stuff for the workshop there in the last couple of days. I was preparing short video pieces and then short audio pieces, and I was able to take an iPhone, which I hadn't worked on before, and with the software iMovies, which is on most iPhones, I was able to bring together the video that I had prepared and the audio, and then record a poem over it to produce a simple poetry film in about an hour.
Okay, I personally don't have an iPhone. I have a Samsung, whatever. Can I still make a poetry film?
Yeah. So I'm getting up to speed with that. So that I use an iMac and I use Final Cut Pro, which is the editing software. But you can make a film with an iPhone or an Android or any laptop. The software, you can get free software, and basically you can use a camera for your iPhone. So all you need is any phone, any smartphone. You can make a poetry film with any smartphone.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe let's start with the beginning. What is a poetry film?
Well, I think I saw my first poetry film in 1990. I actually remember seeing it in the Triskel Arts Centre in Cork after a film. I went to see a film there at the Triskel Arts Centre, and there was a poetry film on, and I always loved poetry at the time, but I had never seen a poetry film. And it was a poetry film, an English poetry film. So it was basically a poem with a video on it. And it's kind of to, I suppose, enhance the poem in some way and make it more accessible, or to open it up to people. And because everybody's on their phones all the time now, everybody watches TV, everyone watches Netflix. An awful lot of people don't read anymore, or they don't sit down and read a book. And I know probably the people who are listening to us read a lot, but there is an awful lot of people, I think, that probably don't read at all. They prefer to get things quick on their phone. But I mean, poetry films are around before smartphones, but that simply put is a poetry film is something that combines visual and the poem and makes it together. Now, some of the kind of people who talk and discuss poetry films and the experts on it say there are several types of poetry film, but you might say there are two. Some people say there are two types. There's poetry films, which are a poem that you make a film about, and then there's video poems, which are something that might grow organically itself. So the words mightn't exist. You might put together visuals and then words at the same time. And an awful lot of the video poems or poetry films you see are a bit like that. And they're very good, they're excellent, and they're fantastic. But if you take the poem out of them, they don't stand on their own, really, the poems. They're a combination.
Okay.
But I tend to make poetry films because I am a poet. So I tend to start with the words and then put something on it.
They're not just your words, because I've just watched your Vimeo page. I'll put a link underneath this video. And there's Robert Browning, for example, you made it. And there's people you probably know, I mean, other poets that you've used their, or maybe they've given you their poems to make a film, to make a visual counterpart in a way. So how do you do that? Because you don't purely illustrate what the poet says or what the poem says. You do something else. How do you come up with the images that you want to put with the poetry?
I think it's just a feeling, really, Moze. Like you can interpret it exactly, but that doesn't always work. It rarely works really, because I suppose an awful lot of poems don't have stories, but a lot of my poems do have stories, so it's easy to do that. But I think it's kind of an aesthetic, or what kind of, I like art as well. So I think you kind of have to like art, and you kind of have to like visual interpretations and images to be able to combine the words and the visual. As you say, direct interpretation can be boring. It mightn't work. So I just kind of pick what I feel like. It could be a color, it could be anything. It's like when you go into, I'm sure you're the same, that when you like going to galleries and you like going to art galleries and you like art. So, and you also like words. So something.
Yeah, if you're talking to me, I get excited by some images, but and I think you do too, but they're usually the images I see through my phone outside or something like that. Because let's take your Philips Atlas of the World, which I think is brilliant. I don't think there is any real geographical picture in there, is there?
No, yeah, so that's a good point. There isn't any geographical. It's about maps of the world. But I suppose it's something that I used to think when I was young. You'd look at water on a table, or you'd look at a stone, and you think you could make out the shape of a country.
Yeah.
So,
well, actually, that's what happens when I look at it. You say the names of countries, and then I see them, but I think I'm looking at kind of, soap bubbles or something like that.
yeah,
Very suggestive, and in a way that's exciting for some reason. I don't know. If you say literally, okay, now you're looking at Ireland, now you're looking at England, that's boring. But if you think you see Ireland or England in those bubbles, it gets it's like a discovery.
yeah, it's bringing you into the poem, yes.
Yeah.
And it's making you kind of work on it, or it's kind of a feeling that a kind of a deeper understanding of the poem, really. So that's what's meant to happen. So that's great that you saw that, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you also use like historical material? I mean, for example, what's the one about the crow? I think. I mean, sometimes it's like it has a line in it, the film, and it looks like it's very old. Is that something you did, or do you really use found films made in 1923 or something like that?
Was that Electrified or Crow? It could have both kind of used that technique.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. So no, that's just an effect that I put on it.
Okay, so you use new material and you make it look old.
Yes.
Okay, historical.
So it's it's, I suppose, the wonderful thing about making videos is that you really, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
You can do anything, And
well, yeah. I mean, you have this, which I really like this. I'm intrigued by the Citadels video, which is just clouds from an airplane with a poem.
Yeah.
But the poem has a kind of weight to it, as if you come from a country that, where did you come from when you wrote that? What is it about?
I suppose it's kind of a dystopian poem. If you really ask me what that poem is about, I think it's kind of more stream of consciousness when I wrote it. I wrote it a long time ago. So it's kind of a dystopian feel, about a place in the future where there's no paper and there's, the things are gone terrible. Maybe some people might say we're after entering that period already.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's in a plane. So obviously looking out of a plane, you're going to see clouds.
Yeah.
And the footage was actually just taken by my kids, I'd say 10 years ago when they were very young, when we went on holidays. Okay. So that's it. I just had it like, I suppose I take my camera with me. The iPhone is a great tool. I take pictures and videos wherever I go, and I just keep them. And then when you have a poem that you want to make a video out of, you can just look back over what you have and pick something that might work.
It's quite interesting how that resonates with. But for example, it resonated for me with Afghanistan, which is now in a terrible state, which upsets many people, including myself. And I almost felt that it was about that, but it can't be because it was made a few years ago. But it also reminded me of flying back from South Africa after the World Summit on Sustainable Development and feeling very heavy people sitting in that plane and feeling that they couldn't do much to change the world for the better. That's the feeling I got from it.
Yeah,
but obviously you weren't even sitting in that plane when you wrote the poem.
No, but I mean, it is that kind of feel, really. It's about an old man talking about the past, and maybe things were better in the past, I suppose, but
no, they never are. Or some of them were and others weren't. You describe yourself in your biography as a chemical engineer who's always written poetry, and you have one on the Vimeo is one very interesting poem, Tectonic Plates from your collection, and it's about poetry and science and how they relate to each other. Is that a very personal thing for you? Because obviously a chemical engineer, I'm not even sure what you do as a chemical engineer, but it must have something to do with science at some point.
Yeah.
So is that a personal conflict inside yourself?
I suppose it's something like I've been a chemical. I'm a chemical engineer for the last 30 years. I've finished down the last 12 months, but I've been a poet for just as long or longer, and there isn't too many scientists and poets out there. People who are scientists and poets. There, not an awful lot of poetry talks about science, and I suppose I'm really, I suppose my beliefs are science based, and therefore. But I love art and I love poetry, so it's trying to combine the two has been something that I've been trying to do for a long time. No, I haven't. It hasn't worked for me, but in a lot of cases. But I suppose that poem is basically about that. Is trying to show the beauty in science, or see that there is a connect there. Science can be beautiful. Science is about truth. Poetry is about truth. Poetry is beautiful. So it's trying to, maybe I'd love to be able to write good poems about science, because I find science intriguing, and so it is very personal, really, that poem. I have to say.
You say your beliefs are science-based. Thanks to your posting of videos, I think I'm not sure what kind of beliefs are you talking about.
No, I suppose I wouldn't consider myself a very spiritual person. No, like I was brought up as a Catholic, but. Maybe that's the way I feel. I just don't feel spiritual,
But you
so I love
as quite spiritual, if I don't mind.
Yeah, but I love nature. I love nature and life.
Yeah.
But I tend to think of it in terms of I suppose what I learned in school under science,
But you, as I said, if I can see your videos, and there's like a video about prayers to Saint Anthony. And that is, it sounds like it is about a different sort of belief. But I believe you're lost, or is it still there?
It's a loss of belief, really, in that case. But I mean, people can interpret poems as they see, I mean, other people may get different things out of that. But for me, it's like I was brought up very much as a Catholic in a very, conservative Catholic Ireland. So that's ingrained in me. And going to mass every week, listening to the Bible, a lot that language is ingrained in me. So it's I haven't thrown it away. But that poem about Saint Anthony is really a poem about loss of belief, to be honest.
But in some ways, because it is a film and the visuals are very strong, it doesn't feel like that, because the visuals are still there, and they're filmed in a loving way. And it's also, I think it's quite moving, because you talk about yourself as a boy, being very attached to certain objects that are related to religion. So I mean that stays there. I mean, maybe it's the same attachment as the attachment to the crow, or the attachment to the trees, or whatever. Do you think there's a lot of difference between that, between loving nature and loving religion, or loving God, or whatever?
Yeah. I can see the strength of religion. I really can, and I suppose I would defend religion and defend people's right to religion. And I can also see the negative things about religion, which are obviously very apparent at the moment, like with the likes of Afghanistan and stuff like this. But you know, I suppose the attachment to objects is something. Yeah, I am attached to objects, definitely. So and I see it more as that. Like, I love books, and I have an attachment to maybe a certain book that my uncle might have given me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I see the attachment to that as a kind of a sentimental attachment, rather than and the attachment to the relic in the Prayer to Saint Anthony. I would see it as similar. It's a sentimental rather than a spiritual. I did think of it as a spiritual attachment at the time, and I think it doesn't mean I don't have an attachment to it, but I think I realized then that it was sentimental rather than a spiritual. Now, like you say that you see spirituality in my poetry, and maybe it is there, you know, I suppose. It's interesting that you might say that. I don't feel spiritual, but that doesn't mean I'm not.
Well, I because I remember reading your poetry collection. God, can you give me the title? It's about, not gladiators, is it?
What news, centurions?
Oh, centurions, sorry.
Yeah.
and I think with I've just started really looking at your poetry films, and I think that the visual element brings more spirituality into it. I think maybe because it's also very intuitive. It's what you choose as visuals is more intuitive, I think, than words, but I'm not sure about that. It's difficult to write really intuitively using words in that way.
When you say intuitive, what do you mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think if you choose a certain images or certain angles, you don't really think about that. It's kind of a gut feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gut feeling. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I feel that some of my poems may not be accessible, you know, because they're me thinking too deeply about myself and writing too personal. So I'm not brilliant at making my poems accessible, but I do feel that when I bring video onto them, I can make them more accessible. And as you say, intuitive, and that, you know, I can link a visual image with the words, and then people might get it easier.
Yeah, I mean, I did, you know, you have two poems about superlatives, or two poetry films about superlatives on your page that I've seen. And it really made me think about superlatives, like in a kind of spiritual way almost, because it's almost like talking about gods or angels or whatever. And then you have a beautiful picture of a tuba, for example, which is sort of gleamingly gold, but you also, or gold is not, it's copper, of course, but the color is really like gold. And then the other film is, you just told me, made in France. Can you tell a little bit about the situation that you found there?
Yeah, we were in France actually with Ovail.
Okay.
Paul is connected with an awful lot of associations, and there was different festivals around Europe that Ovail went to for the last number of years. Obviously not the last 2 years, but we went to a festival in the center of France, it kind of about south of Nantes, and it was a beautiful little village there, a beautiful place. And then we did readings and we did workshops with English people, Italian people, French people, people with special needs. It was really a great week we spent there, and about 5 of us, and we stayed in an old mill on a river. And then we went to a castle one day, this really old castle, and Norman Castle, but it was all workshops there, and there was these people working there on this dinosaur, a metal dinosaur, and that's where I took the footage of them working on this metal dinosaur.
Funny, I thought I saw it as a dragon. I didn't even see it was a dinosaur, and then I thought that it was. I mean, it probably was more like a coincidence, or did you write the poem because of the film? Or was the poem already? Is it already there?
That I wrote that poem years ago, but it's a poem, I suppose, one of my favorite personal poems.
Yeah,
I wrote it, I'd say 40 years ago. To be not 40, sorry, 35 years ago.
Oh, well.
So
Yeah, and then to find people making dinosaurs. I mean, if you were making a film for Hollywood, you'd have to spend, I don't know, millions or a lot of money to create that, to create a dinosaur, and you just found it and used it for your poem. And I think that's great.
it's funny, I was probably looking for an image for years, but I tried two different images, and one was the band, that was one image. The band, it was in the jazz festival in Cork. That's the people with the big heads, and then the other one was the dinosaur in France. That film actually was shown in the Glucksman.
Okay, yeah.
As part of a digital art festival conference, a big conference that James O'Sullivan held in UCC about 4 years ago, we'll say, and it was shown in the Glucksman. There was an awful lot of different visual art, visual poetry, and visual literature. It was a visual literature festival, actually. So that was great to have it shown there in the Glucksman.
Okay, I have two more questions, and then we finish up, not to get too overly long. Do you have specific video skills? I mean, I know that it is difficult for people do you do a lot of editing? Do you shoot a lot of footage and then take out the best, use the best bits, or do you have a skill to hold your camera in a certain way, like hold it still, so it looks quite good what you're presenting? Is that like the tip of the iceberg?
I'm not a natural photographer, I'd say. That's what I'd say to you. Some photographers, I'd imagine, can go out and they get the right picture right away, Like I made a poetry film recently with somebody, and I took about two hours of video for 2 minutes. Okay. And that's kind of what I do. Now, I can get stuff offline as well, but I spend a lot of time editing.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the skills as an engineer have helped me that way. Yeah. Because, I've had to work with, like, I wouldn't be great at technology, but I've had to work with detail a lot through my career, detail of writing instructions. And so I feel that, I think the editing is a big part of it. I would spend, I made the animated film that I made there. Now that was animation as well, but that took hundreds of hours to make, actually. So yeah, it's I'm not a natural photographer. I would say I take a lot of stuff and then put a lot of work into it to get it to the little poetry film,
Okay, for people who have never done this before and they want to just sort of try it out, double with it and go to your workshop, what do you suggest we do?
Yeah, I'm planning the workshop to make it accessible so that a person can make a poetry film within a month of the workshop.
Okay, because there's two workshops actually.
Yeah.
One in September, the second one a month later in October. And we'll get the tools, or we get a kind of a glimpse of the tools that we can use by attending your first workshop.
Exactly.
So we don't need to do anything in preparation.
No, nothing in preparation. What I'm going to do is provide 4 pieces of video and 4 pieces of audio, and then hopefully show people that they can you just get download an app on their phone or download an app on their laptop, and then simply combine them and write a poem about them if they want. If they're if they feel that they'd like a new poem, or else use an old poem. And so with a small bit of work, people will be able to make a poetry film. Now, other people might want to make a poetry film from scratch, and that's, I suppose, all that is viable as well for them. It all depends on where you stand from a technology point of view. So hopefully people will, I suppose, be inspired to think that it's easy to make a poetry film, which I think in a sense it is, but you have to put a little bit of work in. All right.
Yeah. And you don't even have to be a poet. You can use use Shakespeare or
Exactly. Yeah.
Rumi or whatever, and make
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
poem out of that. And you kindly said that if people want to approach you between the two workshops, you're available to give them advice
Yes.
within limits, maybe. 20
Hopefully there won't be hundreds.
Okay, well, I really look forward to your workshop on the 6th of September. And then
Eight.
oh, this is fucking, oh, Jesus. The 8th of September, and then there's another workshop on the 6th of October. Don't listen to me, listen to Colm, and see you on the 8th of September, 8:30 on Zoom. If you want a link, write to DeBarra spoken word at gmail.com or go to our Facebook page where there will shortly be an event, and we will post the Zoom link there on the day, not before, on the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.